In this episode, we talk about what happens right after you got an investment, how you have to do the reporting to a VC, and how you as a founder can leverage your venture capital relationships.
Learn more about the do's and don'ts in venture capital.
Welcome to episode 7 of this podcast series, Venture Capital Deep Dive. In this podcast, we talk about everything a first-time founder needs to know about the why of a venture capital investor. This podcast is brought to you by btov Ventures, a Switzerland-based venture capital fund established in 2000 and focused on early-stage startup investing. And I am Cédric, your host of this podcast and the founder of globaltechbooks.com, a video platform focused on insightful interviews with experts around startups, tech, and innovation. Make sure to check them both out. Alexander Stoeckel is a partner at btov since 2012, board member since 2014, and is actively seeking the best entrepreneurs and most promising startups. You can reach him over LinkedIn and email. So in today's episode, we talk about everything that is going on right after an investment was done by a venture capital fund and how the startup can use that money. So first of all, let's talk about like the moment like the money arrived at the startup. What's happening right now?
Generally speaking, not much should happen. They should just continue their business and use the funds as intended. Yep. So start the next marketing campaign or hire the next person or buy the next server or whatever they intend to do with the monies. If you're looking at companies in later stages after the Series A, especially after the Series B and C, you're talking about bigger funds pouring into the company. And then at some point, the way the company works has to change as well. So now you're not a startup anymore. You are more like a medium-sized company in a way. And if you don't get to a level where you can pull in a second layer of management, for example, where you as founder and CEO can delegate certain tasks to somebody taking care of HR things, marketing things, and accounting things, and product-related things, then you will at some point run into trouble simply because one person cannot handle everything. So you will have to build a company in a way that it is fit for further growth. And you need to be skilled enough to hack this growth by really implementing new processes that sort of standardize the way you operate as a team.
You know, this money is meant to be used and you need reports on it. What exactly, how often do you need these reports and what exactly are you looking for within them?
So the standard rule is you get monthly reports. They comprise both qualitative and quantitative items. So qualitative would be talking about the business development efforts that you're making and how they work out, maybe highlighting the pipeline of your sales efforts, etc. And on the quantitative side, you report on KPIs, user growth, revenue growth, development of cost of goods sold, maybe some other significant KPI that is important for your company. And that way, keep the investor informed about what's happening in your company. On a quarterly or half-year basis, you should probably sit down with the investor or at least with the lead investor of your company to discuss where the company is going in terms of strategy. Are we still on the right path? What are the things that we need to do in the next 6 to 12 months? Is there anything the investors can contribute, how they can help, etc., etc.?
When you look at these reports, what are, let's say, the main red flags that you're looking for or that are really like popping into your eyes the moment you see them?
I would say in 99% of the cases, you will see deviations from the initial budget. So hardly ever companies manage to really meet the targets, which is okay because in most cases, they are stretch goals and more ambitious than one could hope to achieve, really. We will certainly take a closer look if the deviations are substantial. So if you're missing the target by 80 or 90%, if you're not getting anywhere, and then maybe discuss with the founders what are the reasons for this deviation from the plan. Is there anything in the operations, anything in the team? Is there any problem with the product, etc.? Can we help again? The experienced investor will, again, not impose himself or herself on the founder. He will just be a positive backer and supporter and somebody who offers help and does not claim to be the best person for everything. Just somebody who can maybe open a door or introduce somebody else to really help the company.
This time in between you made the first investment, and then probably very soon, I mean, the less the money you invested, the sooner you will probably have a follow-on round. What exactly happens during this time in between rounds?
During the first round, you will think about when and how are we going to raise the next round. So what will be the valuation, or could be the valuation in the next round? What would be the underlying KPIs? And does this fit? So do we have enough traction and enough performance at this level, at this point in time, to be able to go out to the market and raise another round of funding? The other thing is really to think about the big picture. So there's a big risk that the company at some point gets distracted by other things. And then it's important to at least ask the question, are we still in line with what we discussed before in terms of the exit? We said that, I don't know, we should get users up to the maximum because the more users we have, the more valuable the company will be. So are we still on track with that? And how does that fit with the numbers that we're seeing in terms of user growth right now? Do we have to readjust the strategy? Or is there anything that we should know that you're focusing on at the moment? And I think ultimately the fundraising for the next round will start again 6 to 8 months before it will actually take place. So give yourself enough room to maneuver. Think about the best possible setup for the next round of funding, and also where the company should be at this point, and then try to really work towards that goal. And then you should be well off.
I think, and in this stage of the whole investment process is the moment where investors really claim to be the smart investors. So you have like the triple Fs where you say like, okay, like they give you money, but no additional value. And I think like this is exactly the moment where these smart investors have their moment to shine. So what is it that like you would say, what can an investor do now in this stage beyond fundraising that can bring a company or a startup to the next level?
I remember writing an editorial once about this topic, about the best possible investor. And the best possible investor in my eyes is some sort of Jedi Knight kind of investor guy, because he's not always there. He's not like, I don't know, the police running your company and controlling every single step. But he's there if you want to talk to him. He's there to give advice, open certain options, for example, and say, I can introduce you to this company. I could introduce you to this guy who could be somebody to come to your team, for example. We can discuss your expansion strategy, and I'm more than happy to bring in an expert who can advise you on whether you want to expand to the UK or to France, etc. So I think this investor is really not only claiming to be able to open doors, he's really able to open doors. And in the best case, to open the doors to actual revenue. If this investor can bring in revenue to the company, this will extend your period until the next round of funding will take place, and sort of loosen the tight ropes that are knit around you as a company, just in terms of performance, because revenue generating will always loosen these ropes a little bit and give you more room to wiggle and maneuver.
I think in theory, I mean, it sounds great, and probably every entrepreneur would sign up to this. Reality is that sometimes you have a very big cap table, and it's very, very hard, number one, to keep in touch with all of the investors, but also to understand like which investor can help with which issue. So how do you foster this communication, I would say specifically from an entrepreneur to the investor? Because I mean, as an investor, you can always reach out, but like how can you get an entrepreneur to really think of you the moment they have a problem?
Yeah, I think this goes back to the investor selection process that we discussed in one of the previous episodes. If you did your investor selection process the way I sketched in the previous episode, you would have chosen the investor according to a rigorous analysis of the investor environment. So you have a good understanding of the strengths and capabilities of these individual investors that are on your cap table. Maybe you have some sort of map of skills, connections, seniority, how deep their pockets are, etc., etc. And then you can really take out this list, if you will, once you have a problem, and discuss it with the most suitable investor from your group. So let's just say maybe you have a business angel who used to be CEO of this and that company. So he might be ideally suited to open the door to that company. Maybe you have a private VC who could help you, I don't know, introduce a new CTO candidate because he has been in the sector for quite some time and he has a very broad pool of talents at his disposal. And maybe you also have a corporate venture capitalist at your disposal who at the beginning offered that you can, use his testing facilities, for example, or get access to some of the customers from that corporation. So that would be the right person and entity to talk to in that regard. So I think this is really my recommendation from the beginning on. Think hard about the syndicate you're building and the investor selection process, because later on during the investment phase, you can draw on this information that you filed under this list and then make use of it so that you can leverage the power of the investors to your benefit.
Now we discussed everything but the fundraising, that can the investor can help you during like this in-between stage. And now obviously like the fundraising. What are kind of like the criteria when you say like, okay, good money follows bad money or vice versa, bad money follow on? When would you say like for you is a good situation to come up with another chunk of money to follow on another investment round?
For each VC, the financing strategy does not only concern the initial round of funding, but also later rounds of funding. So you always, as a VC, you always have a reserve that you're building the moment you do the initial investment. So in theory, the money is already there. The question is for the VC, are we now putting everything on this horse and this jockey, or is it not a good moment? And then the problem for the VC is that in many cases, the team itself, who's working with the founders, gets turned over time. And I mean that in a very positive way. So they become molds, if you will, of the founder, because they get so close to the teams. They sit down with them on a regular basis. They discuss the strategy, they discuss the funding needs, etc., etc. They get closer to these personalities, and at some point they might lose the analytical rigor, if you will, to really look at the case very objectively and say, this is not really working out. So within the VC, at some point, you have to take away the investment decision from the team that's working with the founders, because they might not be, and I'm saying this in all caution, might not be objective enough to, if need be, pull the plug, if you will. Which would always be the last resort. The other thing as a founder that you should understand is that the VC is already invested in your company and has a natural tendency. He's inclined to investing more in your company because otherwise his previous investment is going down the drains, right? So the preposition of your next funding round is relatively positive because you have a number of investors already on board who would like to see everything except for their money going down the drains. So if you can provide enough positive signals in terms of growth of users, growth of revenues, growth of whatever you're doing, then you should be in a good position to really get money from your existing investors, which is a positive signal to external investors who you can invite to join the present round as well. Also, try to make use of the links and relations of your existing investors to other people in the venture community. So in many cases, VCs, corporate VCs, business angels have strong ties with other investors from the industry and can help you in the fundraising process. So again, approach this topic very early, 8 to 6 months before you really want to have the monies on your bank account, and try to involve your existing investors in the fundraising effort.
Now, what would you say in very short that you would say like, no, this is no way that you're going to invest again?
If, for example, the team somehow dissolves itself and if the founders go abroad, if all the numbers are really pointing south, if something happens in terms of fraud, unethical business behavior, etc., that would all be immediate deal breakers. But again, we are investors in the company. We consider ourselves partners and shareholders. And so until the very last point, we will back and support the founder, except if there's really substantial reason not to. But we will always give them the benefit of the doubt.
And last one for this episode, how should a venture capital in general behave towards the founder? What is best practice when you say like, you're looking between these rounds? What is it that like you would feel is the right and appropriate behavior towards the founders?
That's a complicated question, but I'm just giving you my personal opinion. I personally think that a display of humble behavior and respectful behavior is what is really appropriate. So these people are risking their lives, literally speaking,
yes.
To build these companies. And you should honor that and never assume that they're taking decisions lightly, et cetera, because at the end of the day, their future success depends on that. I also think that you shouldn't think of yourself as being the better entrepreneur. I think If you think that you are the better entrepreneur than the guy you founded, you made a mistake in the very first funding round, to be very honest, and should rather start the same company yourself. Also, I think that you misunderstand the motivation. These people do not start companies because they want to be told what to do. They start companies because they have a fairly good understanding of what needs to be done in this certain market and with this product, and want to take the company to some tremendous success level. So you can really trust your team that they're making their best efforts to take the company to the next level. That being said, I think it also doesn't make sense to consider yourself the servant of the founder. The founder needs somebody who he can talk to on eye level about things that he cannot discuss maybe with any other person in the company. So maybe he has to talk about, can I somehow replace my co-founder, for example? Can we find an agreeable way to do that? How can we, bring somebody else to the team? I have this issue with, something in my personal life that might keep me away from the company for this and that reason. How can we manage that? So you need to be humble, and at the same time, you need to be confident enough to be a partner and substantial help to the founder you're backing. Yeah, that would be my preferred mindset.
Thank you so much. Next time we talk about when to start thinking of selling your startup, how to actually sell it, and what role taxes and regulations play. Till the next time.